Hello and welcome to Mikei Talk. Today I am here with Zep,
Hey,
and I'm also here with JiggyJoe,
how goes it?
and we're going to be discussing the upcoming raids and just talk about what we're expecting, our experience from the beta weekends, our previous experience in other games with raids, and just our general thoughts on raids and see how it's going. So let's start off. Are you guys excited for raids? I mean, are you looking forward to it? It's been, compared to when Hearthorn's launched, it's actually been almost a month since Hearthorn's launched that we've had to wait for raids. So, Joe, are you excited about it?
Oh, immensely. I mean, personally, as someone who has, you know, followed the game from basically its inception to, where we're at now, um, I've been a huge advocate for PvE content, and that's always been where my heart has lied for the game. And I feel these past few years, I mean, yeah, we've gotten fractals, we've got, several new zones to, help us along the line with the PvE content. But when it comes to competitive stuff, to more endgame stuff, we don't really have that at this point. I mean, we do have some fractals, but personally, I love the dungeons. And the dungeons aren't even a thing anymore because I don't know why, but they've kind of just said, hey
Mm,
man,
mm.
we're just going to kind of toss aside the dungeons for now. We're going to push the community towards this content that we just made. The fractals, they're kind of pushing a little bit more, especially with the upcoming update on Tuesday.
Mm.
But it's kind of made me a little bit disappointed in them when it comes to, like dungeons. Because I mean, there's still dungeons. You can still run them; they're not going anywhere. But they've kind of nerfed a lot of the rewards, and also a lot of the community is just not going to be progressing towards it. But with the raids coming into play, you do have the new feeling of exploration, figuring out the challenges, the puzzles, and all that lie within the raids, and that's something that I really do miss from the inception
Yeah.
of the game. Was figuring out the dungeons, figuring out how to take out challenges with your friends, and that's mostly what I'm excited for.
All right, then let me ask you, Zep. I mean, what do you think that when with raids coming in, what hole do you think it's going to fill in the world of Guild Wars 2? What is it going to bring to Guild Wars 2 that it doesn't exist right now?
And that's one thing that makes me most excited is Guild Wars with this expansion is constantly changing and adapting to its new environment, and raiding is a huge environment. Like just as big as the jungle is within the new expansion, so will be the raiding community. It's a community that has basically been limited to dungeons to the point where they don't even really run it anymore because it doesn't profit us to run dungeons. Like, yeah, it's fun, but other than that, it doesn't have much benefit. And with that said, rating is just a huge benefit, not only just as gameplay, but you get an entire economy behind it. Like, it boosts the need to get ascended materials. That is going to create a drive to uh, get those materials. And not only that, more, it basically creates a bigger market within the marketplace itself. Along with that said, it brings a type of community that may be elitism, that may be casual, and that might even be Care Bear. Either way you look at it, it's going to bring an interesting concept to the Guild Wars community itself.
And what also about we talked about, like, for example, some of the different, it's going to be hardcore content, so it is going to be difficult content. But also we're getting the opportunity for legendary rewards, and they're bringing in a new tier of different type of rewards. So that's going to be another benefit, surely.
Yeah, and with along with new gear comes a uh, a type of pride, honor, and like sense of accomplishment. And to have that gear right away compared to the majority of the people who are just getting at endgame is going to be something that I look forward to farming my brains out.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, again, the way they've described how the legendary armor sort of thing's going to work out, but it hasn't been completely clear. But for those of you who are listening in, and the way it's going to be worked out, the first raid they've said is going to be made up of 3 distinct raid wings, and we're just getting access to the first raid wing. And the beta weekend, we had the first stage of the first wing. So, did you both play the beta weekend where you played the raid?
Yes, I definitely did. I know there was a handful of issues. First of all, we could not even access the raid for the first, like, what, 3/4 of
Oh
the
yeah,
release, and
yeah,
I know
yeah.
there was like a small handful of people that got really lucky that got to experience it when it very first launched, but that was a very, very small handful of the community. And um, personally, from what I played, I very much enjoyed the small amount that they gave us because it gave us an idea as to what they were working on, what their vision was, and
Mm,
it definitely made me um, excited for what they were pushing out because I was in it for a good 4, 5, 6 hours with several pugs. I never raided with a guild or anyone,
yeah,
any like coordinated group of any kind on TeamSpeak or anything. It was all pugs because
yeah.
you didn't have the amount of people needed within the guilds or within friend groups or whatever needed to complete the particular task coordinated at the time because of the small amount of it was very random, sporadic with the patches
Yeah.
and the changes and stuff. But
But I was going to say, I feel the way they designed that the first stage was kind of interesting in the fact that it gives players a grounding. You had 3 different bosses, and one required DPS, one required, condition damage, and it actually gave you the opportunity to learn the different features and how bosses are different.
exactly, and that's another aspect that I'm very excited for. I know they were talking about um, I don't know how recent this was, but they were talking about how you needed to be flexible with the way that you play your characters. You're gonna have to go, you're gonna have to go outside your comfort zone, so to say,
Mm,
to accomplish
not just the
certain.
Zerka meta.
Exactly. You're not gonna be able to just zerker meta through all of it because if you do that, either you're gonna have to understand the mechanics of what needs to be done in front of you extremely well, or
Mm,
you're just gonna wipe. Because from what I understood from the small amount that we got to play during the beta weekend is that uh, you're not going to be able to pug through it as easily as people probably expect to, as people have come to expect to in Guild Wars 2.
yeah.
It's not going to be like
Uh,
like the
yeah.
fractals and stuff. So
And so, Zep, would you think that's a good thing? The fact that you can't pug, and this content wouldn't be for, it's not going to be completable by everybody. You actually need to have, be on TeamSpeak, for example, and be able to coordinate with others.
Yeah, and that kind of also leads to the idea of kind of creating a little bit of a gap between people who have been sitting at endgame for about a year and a half waiting for this, and then the people who are just getting into for the free to play. Uh, just as the free to play members get access to uh, better and better things as more things come out, as do the people who have gotten into Heart and Thorns and are ready to progress. An example myself, I'm waiting for the raids to come out so I have something to do. You know, uh, as I feel many other players do too.
Yeah. I will also just talk to you guys about the rewards that they've said. So obviously we mentioned about the legendary armor or the legendary precursor armor. You also had the opportunity to get ascended equipment drops, which obviously in fractals they used to drop quite a decent amount. They've nerfed that a little bit. I think they're going to bring that back in December. You can also get unique equipment skins, so particular raid skins. There are also the opportunity to get a compendium of knowledge, which is basically mastery track XP. You can boost your mastery progress. Guild hall decorations for when you defeat a boss, you'll get a guild hall decorations and unique miniatures. So a bit of a different range and quite some high end content right now. I mean, those type of rewards are they appealing to you guys?
oh, very very much so. I mean, when it comes to Guild Wars, it's always come to how your character looks and Yeah, it's basically Fashion Wars 2 for the most part, as most people refer to it as. And I feel the Raiden is definitely a fantastic opportunity for people to show and express something special that not a lot of people will be able to achieve, at least, right off the bat. Because that's one thing that I feel that it needs to be. Not only does a specific item look cool, but it has to
Mm.
has to have has to represent something, in my opinion. It has to show off, hey, I spent the time, the effort to achieve this. It's practically a trophy that you're wearing. And I think that's the idea behind the legendary weapons is, it shows off, hey, I achieved this. And at the end of the day, it's something that you carry around for your remaining time on the game.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And also one thing that it hasn't been covered. It was pretty new in the last beta weekend. It was a little bit hit and miss, and that is the squad UI for commanders. That's being reintroduced with the raid-in system, and they did a guild chat where they actually showed off some of the different features and how you can talk to people and talk to different subgroups in those squads. And I think that's definitely going to add to the ability to coordinate your team a lot better. I mean, are you impressed with? I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff. Are you impressed with the squad UI? Because obviously, Joe, you saw it in the beta weekend 3.
Yep, and that's definitely something that I feel will greatly benefit the community in general because, for instance, with what we have now, um, standard five-man groups, and we do have some type of squad, UI going on with the commander tags. You're able to join up into some type of squads, but you're not able to see everyone really. But
Mm-hmm.
from what I've seen, you're able to ready up and do ready checks before every boss, which definitely helps. So you don't have anyone, going running in Leroy Jenkinson
Yeah, yeah,
the situation, and screwing it up. And also something that I think they could incorporate is tagging enemies with specific um, symbols, which I know.
yeah.
WoW definitely had that World of Warcraft, so that you're able to target specific enemies and show which ones are like valuable targets, opposed to the ones that you just kind of have to ignore at the particular time. So
Yeah.
it's very clean and it's professionally made. But I also think that it's got a good amount of tools and thought process behind it. That it's got a pretty good start from what we got. So
Yeah, well, let me ask you guys this. What is your experience of raids in the past? Be it some of the content you've seen, probably from Guild Wars 1, where you had, with the factions release, they brought in the Deep and Ergo's Warren, and that was 12-man instance content. And just some of the other games that you've played previously. What's your experience of raids?
um,
I'll start with Zep. Zep,
sure.
yeah.
Um, with a lot of other games, one of the big games that I'm into personally is Rift. And the rating system in that is very simplistic, yet the boss fights are very demanding, that you pay attention, whatnot. And with this, I feel like it's gonna actually be some challenging rating. And my biggest hope uh, for the game is that they don't nerf it or they don't lower the difficulty as they have in dungeons and whatnot in the past. Because I feel like because this is end-to-end game, it should be difficult, and it shouldn't be for people who want to get an easy ride through. I feel like those people who want to get an easy ride through the dungeon and get the really cool looking pretty gear should have to wait at least, 5 or 6 months before they even get to the level of what people have been working for years.
Yeah. And what about you, Joe? I mean, what's your previous experience from raids?
I played Vanilla WoW from when it launched practically to the launch of Wrath of the Lich King, which was the second expansion pack. I like to think of it as the third, but it's actually the second expansion pack. And I was in a pretty heavy raiding community slash guild, and raided pretty much like all the top raids at the time, which was like basically like Sunwell and was it Black Rock? Was that what it's called? I think it was for vanilla. One of the bigger 60-40 man raids, whatever it was. And I can definitely see how it would um, be something that's can either hinder the community of Guild Wars 2 as of now, or it could definitely greatly benefit it. But my raiding experience is definitely a little bit slimmer when it comes to Eric's here. He definitely has a more wetter and general perception of the whole raiding aspect, but I do have a decent amount of experience in the whole idea. So
And
Okay, well, I mean, go on, Zep.
and when it comes to experience, I mean, on a personal note, it's not just American MMOs that have that type of experience, Joe, like WoW does. It's also with Korean games. One thing that I really like about Guild Wars is in Korean MMOs, it has a very in-depth system of crafting gear and whatnot, and that's something Guild Wars has, unlike a lot of NA MMOs. And with that said, rating will be interesting. I feel like if there's a certain food, for example, potting and getting food set up and feasts and stuff, those type of materials used to craft those market-wise will be going up in price. Every little percentage will be going up in price just to get an upper leg on things. And that's one thing that American or NA gaming hasn't really experienced, because WoW is probably the quote more difficult game, and I don't know. I feel like this has a lot of potential of challenging people when it comes to raids.
All right, then let me ask you guys this: how long, as in time, how long do you think? Say an average group, okay, not the elites that speedrun it, or not the slow, sort of very inexperienced people, but say 1 month after raids come out, how long should be an ideal time to complete the first wing of the raid?
that comes down to, I guess, the guild or group that is actually partaking in it. You might have like first server or first game completionists who will push as hard as they fucking can. Oh, I apologize for my language. As hard as they can to push for that goal. And I think for the standard group, I think a good amount of time would be 2.5, 3 weeks maybe for the first week, or for the first wing particularly, to be finished. I think that's a good amount of time.
What I'm actually referring to is, for example, like a dungeon run. For example, let's take Citadel of Flame Path 1. You can do that in about 6 minutes, just on average. Fractals, before Heart of Thorns, a level 50 fractal run. I used to do a lot of them. A good run would be between 35 and 40 minutes for the 4 fractals. So what I'm saying is, how long do you think that the first wing of the fractal should be? This is supposed to be hardcore
hours,
content.
I would say several hours. I would say like anywhere between 4 hours, maybe
And
4 to 5.
a good reference to look at would be the wings of Wrath of the Lich King in WoW. I remember when that came out, the Plague Wing alone. Oh my God, that I remember spending an entire day of my childhood in there.
Yeah.
You you spent majority of your time in that wing and you liked it. Whether you liked it or not.
Sunwell had similar areas where I remember particularly spending a lot of time in Sunwell where we'd spend several hours, like I'm talking like 8, 9 hours in just a particular wing, just wiping over and over and over and over again on specific bosses or in specific groups of mobs, just because we wouldn't coordinate well, we wouldn't CC specific mobs well enough, and we'd just be wiping, and it wasn't a negative thing. It was just people learning the dungeons and stuff, and even after people knew how to clear these bosses, it was still difficult and it still took time. So
Yeah, I do think though ArenaNet has a history of not doing that. The longest content, if I think back, the longest content they did in Guild Wars 1, they had elite areas. You had the Fissure of Woe, and you had the Underworld. Now, eventually, by the end of Guild Wars 1, well, when I say the end, I mean I'm talking prior to Guild Wars 2's launch. You could go around and do the Underworld speed clears in like an hour or so. But, initially it would have taken 2 to 3 hours to do those areas. when you had the factions elite area with Urgo's Warren and also the Deep. Again, you're talking about, I'd say, a good run. You could do it in an hour. On average, it'd take between 90 minutes and 2 hours to do. And I think 2 to 3 hours would be a good step for the first wing as a good run and as a sort of an average run. As the wings progress, I think they're likely to get harder. And so I think, anything like 4 hours, if you're a bad group there, or, if you're inexperienced, then I think, yes, 4 hours is going to be probably amount. But I think 2 to 3 hours should be a good hit in this first month for, for the time it should take you to do this wing. I mean, would you disagree on that?
No, actually, I 100% agree from that basis. When it comes down to people learning the bosses and everything, I think we just kind of need to give the community time to learn everything. And I think that's definitely a good amount of time, because if something takes, an hour and a half, 2 hours to complete, that's phenomenal. That's not something that, I mean, compared to what we got now, that's a massive change, and that's something I greatly appreciate.
Well, yeah, like what is the longest content to do right now?
Oh shoot, I don't know. I mean,
Probably like a Ra.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a Ra dungeons. I mean, a Ra P4. I have to say, when I first did the Ra P4, now I have only done a Ra P4, I think 3 times, because of the long length of it. I mean, the first time I did it, the very first time, it was a pub group. We had none of us had ever done it before. It took us 3 hours to do.
Exactly. And
That was a dungeon.
yeah.
And you got a real sense of accomplishment after it, because we didn't have a clue what was going on. It took us a long time to stumble our way through a lot of the stuff. Of course, you could pay gold to go and get it run. And I'm sure once you've done it a few times, then you'll learn. And I think that's what's going to come with raids. Once people acknowledge the strategies, then it's going to become a bit easier. People know the techniques. Obviously, they'll get put up on YouTube, on wikis, on Dolphy, on how to actually beat certain raid bosses. Have you got any other final thoughts just regarding raids? What are your hopes and what are your fears? Zep, regarding raids.
One of my biggest hopes is that it creates a market that, for me, Heart of Thorns hasn't really opened up, other than few specialty items. And I hope the market it creates is ascended gear and high-end materials needed to craft the gear needed to get in. Not only that, gives players a chance to actually see some end content with maybe some lower gear in the first wing. And one of the biggest fears I'd say of this is people expecting it to be a lot easier than what it will be, and they end up nerfing it due to complaint. Because if they nerf this, I'm going to be, in all honesty, quite butthurt about it.
Yeah, and Joe? Your hopes and fears, for the raids in Guild Wars 2?
Yeah, I hope that it definitely... I hope that ArenaNet definitely sticks to their guns. I hope that they create something that they wanted to make and express with the endgame content. I know they definitely were trying to avoid a lot of the endgame stuff, all the grinding stuff for a long time. And I know that they definitely pushed this out to kind of hit that, to make that community happy for the most part, But I also completely agree with Eric in that I hope that they do not nerf the difficulties of the dungeon. Maybe, I mean, I completely understand, like, fixing issues, bugs and all that, that's fine, but I do not want them to nerf the raids, especially, like, the rewards and stuff in future content if they release other stuff too. So yeah, that's
Yeah, well, I think, anything that brings in new difficult content, if you think back to Quattle when they updated that map and the Triple Trouble Worm, they were both new content, and it took people a while to figure out how to correctly beat it. Once they did, then it was pretty easy, and people did moan. They go, "Oh, this is way too hard," and it was like, well, you got to figure out how to do it. Well, I think, obviously with raids coming in on Tuesday, it's going to be an interesting time for Guild Wars 2. Thank you for joining me, Zep and Joe.
problem.
And if anybody else, out there watching and listening, if you guys want to be part of the next Mikei talk, just leave a comment in the section below saying you want to be part of it, and I'll pick 2 random people. If you can do it at the same time I'm on, then you'll be part of it. This is the whole point, to get a nice discussion for podcasts. And if you have any comments about what we've discussed, please leave it in the section below. But yeah, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and if you want to support me on Patreon, please do. But thanks very much for listening and watching, and thank you to Joe.
Yep. Have a good day, guys.
And thanks to you, Zep, as well.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Cool. All right, see you later, guys. Bye.